Hello, I'm so excited that you have decided to join this presentation, More Than the Tip of the Iceberg, Tips for Creating a Culturally Responsive Classroom for Our English as Second Language Learners. I'm Carissa Blair, and I have been teaching in an English or ESL capacity for about 16 years before I became an instructional coach or instructional transformation specialist in a Jefferson County school. And I'm currently also a Red Mountain Writing Project teacher consultant and C3WP elementary facilitator. And I'm excited about taking you through and us learning together today, and something that is near and dear to my heart that I'm passionate about. And that's about students and quality instruction and creating the environment where students can actually learn. The title of this, More Than the Tip of the Iceberg, came from the analogy, the iceberg analogy. And if you're familiar with Cummins, Bix, and Kaut, many times, unfortunately, we get so busy as teachers that we just look at the surface level of what we can see. And when it comes to our English language learners, a lot of times we look at them and we see, oh, they're able to communicate and they're socially communicating with their peers, and we think that they're doing okay, but we don't see what's underneath. And a lot of times that academic language is what is missing and takes a while to develop, 5 to 7 years to develop. So today, I just encourage you to go with me just a little bit deeper so that we can do what's right for our students and to try to get into the mindset of a student. And so in doing that, I want to ask you a question. What is the last movie that you absolutely loved? When you think about that and a movie comes to your mind, I can guarantee you right now that there was an experience or a character that you are able to relate to and connect to in that movie. Because as human beings, that's what engages us. We are only engaged when we can truly connect or when we can relate in some capacity. And now that I want to ask you this question, imagine that you are in a classroom where you are expected to learn, but you cannot relate or connect to any experience or example that is presented, and you can't even really relate to the person in the room that is presenting those to you. Would you be able to learn? And unfortunately, the answer is probably not. For our students to learn, which is the goal, that's what we want them to be able to do, then they need to be engaged. And to be engaged, they need to be connected. So how can we do that? Before we get to the how, let's look at the why. So why should we create a culturally responsive classroom? Looking at English language learners through the lens of assets and not deficits guides what we do in the classroom and the choices we make about how to do it. Instruction that is culturally responsive and sustaining explicitly challenges the deficit perspective. Rather, students are viewed as possessing valuable linguistic, cultural, and literacy tools. Recognizing, validating, and using these tools ultimately provides the best learning environment for our students and ourselves. So why create this classroom? Because we want students to learn. And in order for them to learn, they need to feel validated. Their contributions should be recognized. That's what creates a culturally responsive classroom, when we see things through their eyes, when we take into consideration all that they have to offer. So now that we looked at the why, let's look at the how. So how do we do this? So today we're going to go through a couple of ways that we can do this. And in the materials, you will be provided even extra examples of how to do this. So I do encourage you to look through the materials. So a couple of tips, we're not going to go through all of these together, but the first one, get to know your students through building positive relationships. And we know this, we do this at the beginning of the year. We have our interest inventories. We pose all these questions to students. What is your favorite color? What's your favorite subject? To try to get to know them, but it's much more than that. If we want students to truly be invested in the learning environment, we need to build those positive relationships. And it's more than just knowing that Johnny's favorite color is green. We need to promote a classroom where we ask questions, where we promote discussion, and everyone's ideas are heard and respected. Students need to feel safe, that where we raise questions and we don't raise judgments. We need to encourage collaboration and give students time to share their thoughts about the learning. And this is something that unfortunately is neglected far too often in the classroom. And so in a moment, we're going to look at a strategy of how to encourage that collaboration and give students that processing time and that sharing time. We also want to choose materials from diverse cultures and perspectives and create lessons based on ideas that directly impact student lives. Once again, that connection. We want to be able to activate prior knowledge and build background information with our students. There are a couple others there that relate primarily to English language learners that I encourage you to look at as well. But looking at the strategy that I just mentioned, teacher talk versus student talk or processing. Many times, we as the teacher give the direct communication in the room, that direct instruction, which we should. Of course, we want to make sure that we are building in there opportunities for our students to truly think and discuss to discuss the content, and also that we're providing visuals as we go through and provide that direct instruction. But when we're looking at that, we want to break it up so that when the teacher is talking, that the teacher would stop talking after 5 to 7 minutes and give that opportunity for students to process. So 2 minutes for the students to process and actually share with a peer. You can use sentence stems here. No matter what you decide to do, the teacher should definitely give some guidance on how this conversation should go. But this would be the time where a student would stop and turn to a partner and to actually communicate their feelings, their ideas, their questions about the content that is being portrayed. So students would talk about maybe one idea that they connected with, or one question that they have based on what the teacher said during instruction. And that is important. We need that processing time. And there's something about us sharing information, even just saying it aloud, that helps us be able to grasp and truly internalize it. And then finally, we want to make sure that students actually understand what has been presented, and they understand even what they process. So we can do that through a formative assessment. It can be something brief. It does not have to be lengthy. I have included ideas for formative assessments in those materials, so you want to make sure that you refer back to those. But it is important that we take, just a minute to formatively assess, whether it's thumbs up, thumbs down. It could be response cards, many other options that you could use there. And then another idea I want to talk to you about is creating culturally responsive libraries. Are the characters of the books representative of the students that you teach? Once again, as humans, we need connection. We want to be able to relate. But unfortunately, sometimes as educators, the books that we choose for our libraries are based on what we can relate to. But those books should be representative of all the different students that we teach. And so we want to take a good, honest, and objective look at our libraries. And one way to do that is just to use a cultural relevance rubric. A lot of times when we think about this question, we'll say, oh, yes, my books are diverse. I have a book on, with a Hispanic student as a character. But no, we want to think about all of our books and the range of books that we have, and how many books do we have that have characters representative of each student in our room. So a way to do this is through the cultural relevance rubric, and this one is by Freeman and Freeman. And a couple of examples of some questions on here. Are the characters in the story like you and your family? Once again, putting ourselves in the student, looking through the student lens. Have you ever had an experience like one described in the story? And skipping down to number 7, do the characters talk like you and your family do? And then here's another example of a cultural relevance rubric as well, that this is also provided in the materials. But I would suggest to take some time and really look at your classroom library and look at the assignments that you give, the examples that you give, and think about the relatability to your student. are they relevant to the students that you teach in this classroom? And once again, multiple resources are available for you, and I would encourage you to take some time to go through those. But if you do have any questions as you go through the presentation, feel free to contact me anytime. My email address is included below and in the PowerPoint. Thank you once again for attending this presentation.